So today I'm going to be doing a double DIN conversion on my 2003 911 996. And what we're going to be doing is putting in a double DIN unit so that we've got the touchscreen, CarPlay, Android connection, all of that stuff. It's going to require some reconfiguration of the center console, meaning pulling out the original factory radio and then relocating climate controls to a different place, taking out the CD holders, and then moving the bin from the lowest position to the second to lowest position. So we'll go through all of that. In later stages, we're going to be putting in a reverse camera as well as a new amplifier. Okay, the first step is to remove the radio, and right here it's got these two little holes, one on either side, where these Becker keys go. They look like that. There it is. And each one will go in there with the curved side inward, and they'll push in and they'll click into place, and then you can pull out the radio. Okay, now the Becker keys, once you slide them in, they clip in this place, and then you can just pull them out and the entire unit will come out. I'm going to take a little break here and make sure that I'm covering things so they don't get damaged, because this is pretty close here, so you might want to make sure that you do that. Pull this out. All the connections are there. I'm going to go and take pictures of all those connections to make sure that I know where everything goes if I need to restore it to factory, or make sure I label everything right afterwards, because I'm going to be installing the double DIN right there, and we'll need to remake some connections. This is what the antenna looks like. There's a clip on there. You want to press that in order to pull it out. And that's the European antenna connection. And likewise, the speaker cables also have a little tab that you're going to push in on the side there. So when it's in here, you have to push in the tab to pull up. And here's these. Similarly, a tab put there to pull that out. So now we've got the radio out of the console. There we go. There it is with its keys still in there, the back of it. And then here is that with all the stuff coming through. Next step is we're going to relocate this with all the climate controls. We're going to relocate that to down here, because that's one of the positions it can fit in. You can see that there's a bezel around here, so this will fit into there. And we're going to take out the CD changer. No longer need it. We're going to replace it with another bin like this, which is going to go into here. So it's going to go climate control, bin, double DIN, and then double DIN will actually have a USB plug for charging, which is going to go into the new bin, which is here. It's going to run through the back, and then the second USB for charging is actually going to go into the glove box, and that way you could either put a portable hard drive in there or charge a second device. So one of the things at this point for removing more of the center console trim pieces, using these trim removers, got them on Amazon for about $0. And the important thing is to not use a screwdriver. Some things you can actually pry off just with your hands, but using these is going to allow you to do it in a much cleaner fashion. So the climate control has this bezel here, which goes around it. So what we don't want to do is pull here and break anything. So I'm going to use my pry tool, the edge, try to get some purchase. There's two little tabs here and here, little plastic grommet things, which I'm going to try to do. Okay, so I just pried it off. You can see it just comes right off. And on the back, there are these little rubber stoppers here, which just go into these little holes. So when you are prying it off, the point of connection is right about here. So what you don't want to do is pull from the bottom and rip it, because they could crack right there. So really you're looking to put your pry tool right in about there and pop it out. And the next thing that we're going to have is, you're going to see here on the side, there's a Phillips and a Phillips. And we're going to be unscrewing that to take out the climate control unit, unplug the cabling. The cabling is going to be snaked down through underneath here. We're going to take off these side panels, take off these panels, and be able to put the unit right there. Next thing I'm going to do, I've just pulled out this piece here. I know that this is the top. This is the top. I just pulled out this piece, and also I'm about to take out 2 Phillips screws off of there, and I want to make sure that I don't lose all these parts. So actually I'm going to put them in little baggies, and I'm going to label things as well. So I'm going to label this where it came from, that it's the climate control, say that this is the top. Put those screws in here so I don't lose them, because the last thing I wanted to do is be putting everything together and not have all of the pieces together. Okay, now to just remove those. All right, I'm going to put them in that plastic bag I mentioned so I don't lose them. And there they are, nice and safe. Next, I'm going to pull out the climate controls, and just like we did with the radio, I'm going to look at all the connections, take a picture of it to make sure that I don't screw it up, if in case I want to refer to it when I move it into the lower panel. And I will also probably be labeling them with the tape as well. For these things, it's pretty clear where they go, and besides, I'm not going to put the Becker unit back in, so this is going to go into the new nav system. But when I pull this thing out, as you can tell, there's a left and a right. So what I'll do is I'll take a picture with my phone right now. Okay, taking a picture, and red is on the left, black is on the right, and I'll be able to unplug that, and it's going to have to be snaked way down through there, behind, and out to where this bin is here. So as I'm about to unplug these here, notice that this harness, which goes back into here, originates from kind of the center position there, and is actually fairly long. Now, it'll be a little bit of a stretch, but you can pull that out, and to be taught when it's going to be in this lower bin position here, because this car originally did have a factory configuration with the climate controls in the lower position. So this harness that's attaching it right now is intended to be able to reach all the way to the bottom. That's going to be a little bit of, apparently, I've heard folks having a little bit of a challenge snaking it all the way to the bottom, but that's what we'll be doing. And note that just like with the radio, these have little tabs. So push there, push down on that tab in order to pull it out, right? So red is on the left, black is on the right, and push the little tabs to pull out, and then we're going to push this thing way back and down. But before we do that, I'm going to remove these trim pieces and the carpeting there so that we can actually reach around. But here's this simple little guy here that's going to be moved into that lower position. Okay, now we're ready to reroute the cables. So I'm going to be removing a few pieces of trim. So I'm going to be removing this piece of trim here using the pry tool, and then pulling out this bin, pulling out the CD holder, and taking out this carpet piece here on the side, and then that'll give me access to where I'm going to route the cables, these cables here, which are the AC control cables, and they'll come out back here, apparently there is a place where, when the factory doubled in configuration, where they had a factory GPS here, there is a route that I can go through there, and I'll show you that once I pull all this out. So just pulling out this piece of trim right here. Again, using the pry tool. Looks like I need to clean that a little bit. Okay, so that piece of trim is out. Okay, and then you'll see this bin here, which I pulled out, pried out, as well as this. But I need 2 hands to do that, so I'm going to pause and do that. And in my case, I just used the pry tool on one side of the bin and then kind of yanked the other 2 out. As long as you go straight out, it's not going to damage the siding too much. So there we go. The guts of the center console. These 2 guys just came out. CD holder is just a holder. And there's the bin. So now what we're going to do is snake these 2, and then one by one, they should be able to fit through. It's hard to see here. They should be able to fit through that hole there in the back. So in the lower configuration, the AC unit is here, and you can see this metal opening right there, and they will come through there. But in order to do that, take off this trim piece right here, this carpeted piece right here, which just pull out at the forward end of the car, and then slide it forward, and then it should pop out. So once again, pull it towards you. So I'm on the passenger side of the car, so just pull it out, and then pull it forward to pull it out from the position it's in. There's a couple of wires and things in the way there, so I'm gonna take those out of the way and then pull out the carpet. So here it is, and as you can see, it's got the little edge there. So that's what it was put in, and I pulled out the front and then pulled it out. It comes out, and there's these little tabs there, these plastic tabs. So you have to be careful not to whack that plastic tab, or else you will not be able to put it back in properly. Now you can see down here, if I can shed some light on that. Down here we've got where we can route those cables, this harness, down, and on this side, and behind this goldish looking thing, and through this opening here. It has to be one by one. And it looks like I'll also be able to fix how these guys were routed, because they do not, they're kind of sticking out of the panel here. So I'll be able to reroute those a little bit better, push them further in as they're coming in from the dash. So one thing to note for the climate controls, they're actually coming from the left side, the driver's side of the car. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side and pop out the panel on the side, since it looks like I'll be able to get a little more length doing it that way and get better access to it, because as you can see, I don't know if you can see, let me put that here, that it's being routed from the left side of the vehicle, not the right side. So I'll be able to pull better from the driver's side than I would at the passenger. So I'm underneath the car, underneath the driver's side, and you can see back here there's a bunch of bundles of cabling. So you just identify the one that is the climate control one. Just pull it through, take some wiggling there, but you can pull that through. You might need to reach up and around and guide the plugs through. So I'm going to do that. Go through here, make sure they're not getting snagged as they're getting pulled through. So here's the black one, a little bit snagged. So you can see that, you know, wiggles there. So that's the right one. So just have to make sure it fits through. head is just really pretty large, so you have to fiddle with it to get through there without its head coming off. So I'm just going to fiddle with that for a while. So I'm underneath the car, underneath the driver's side, and you can see back here there's a bunch of bundles of cabling. So you just identify the one that is the climate control one. Just pull it through, take some wiggling there, but you can pull that through. You might need to reach up and around and guide the plugs through. So I'm going to do that. Come through here, make sure they're not getting snagged as they're getting pulled through. So here's the black one, a little bit snagged. So you can see that, you know, wiggles there. So that's the right one. So just have to make sure it fits through. And the head is just really pretty large, so you have to fiddle with it to get through there without its head coming off. So I'm just going to fiddle with that for a while. Okay, after a little bit of struggling, it's now been routed through the bottom. So there we've got these guys. Now I'm going to feed them one at a time through this metal hole there. That's how the factory would do it when the factory doubled in configuration. This harness feed through here, and that'll let me pop the climate controls right there in the lower position. Okay, cables are routed now through to the right place, so I can actually put the AC unit back in, snapping it into here, and then the bin into the top position. But before that, I'm actually going to drill a hole in the bin to let a USB cable out. So when the double DIN is in here, it's got some plugs in the back for USB, and I'm going to have a USB cable going from here into the bin, so that when I put my phone in the bin, I can place it there to charge. So that's going to be a little bit of drilling work there, and then I can pop that bin in there and all the trim can go back. Okay, so here's the replacement bin that's going to go in there. And you'll see it's got actually a rubber mat underneath it, which is held in. It's just pushed in through this hole. So it's got a rubber mat underneath there. So I'm going to pull out the rubber mat and drill a hole in the backside, first matching inside the car to make sure that there'll be, I can actually run the cable. So USB cable, making sure that it's both able to charge and push data in case I need to do that. And that will go through, I'll drill a hole through here, and then the mat will actually keep in place the charging cable so that it'll won't slide around, won't fall down behind it, and that way I'll just have a hole down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I have just drilled a hole in the back, making sure that it's in a position that could get threaded easily through the hole that we had earlier, and just put a USB cable in there. As you can see, USB cable for iPhone, and here's the other end. And what I'm going to do is when I put this bin in here, I'm just going to thread the USB cable up back the same way that the climate controls came down. It's going to go up and pop into the back area here, where it's going to be able to plug into the sat-nav system with the touchscreen. And that way I'll be able to charge the phone and have a direct USB connection for CarPlay and all that good jazz. Okay, so putting the climate controls back in, I've plugged them back in, red on the left, just like before. But when I was pushing it in here, it was having these tabs having a little bit of trouble clearing this piece of trim here, and I didn't want to damage it. So to take these out, I've already snapped this out, so it's gonna take a bit of pulling for you, but you just pull. It's got a lip here, and the lip is over this edge, like that. So you pull out here and then pull forward. So it's gonna take a bit of pulling. It's gonna feel like it's gonna break, but it's on like this, tucked over that edge. So you don't want to pull on the front edge, you want to pull on the back edge, or actually the front of the vehicle, the back of the panel. Pull out, and then it'll come off. It'll snap right off. So I'm going to do that on both sides. Go to the other side, so that we can try to fit the climate controls in without breaking anything. So once again, I'm going to pull from the side, pull outward. It'll come right off, like that. Now, I'm sliding this in here. It's not going to damage anything. So I'm going to use two hands to do that. Okay, one thing to note when putting this in there, it's not going to look like it should go, and won't be flush. You got to just give it a pop. So press on the buttons to remove those, but holding them to the chassis here, give it a firm push, and it'll pop in to be flush. And that's how you're going to be able to do that, and you're going to be able to put the screws back into the two screw holes. And then, if you remember from before, this is where the trim pieces pop back in. So it's a little rubber grommet. It's going to allow the trim piece to go back in there. Okay, I've just popped the bin in place, and I've got the USB cable coming out there. And then I threaded it through that same metal area that the climate control harness came through, USB, and I'm going to thread that up, make sure there's enough play to get it into here, which is where the double DIN is going to live. So it's going to plug into the back of that unit. Okay, now we can put the trim pieces back on, and that is this, which goes right there, and as well as a different trim piece. This piece here will go on around the AC unit because it is a different size from the AC unit trim here. And then we're also going to need to replace these little rubber thingies there. So let's go and show you that. The difference between the old one and the new one. So the old trim piece, which has now been lost on the table, the old AC trim, you can see it's a very square shape because that was the shape of the opening in the upper position. And then here we still need these rubber things to be transposed onto this thing. Okay, so I've got the old trim piece here, the new one for the lower position here. So I'm going to take these little guys off of these posts and put them on to these posts so that I can press into place. Okay, so next, before I put in the trim panels, that goes around here. It's being that trim panel right there. Before I do that, I'm going to cinch this down with those screws that I originally used to remove it from the upper position. And then I'll put in the bottom trim around here, and then the bottom relocation will be done. But before I do that, I'm actually going to make sure that it works. So I'm going to start up the car and make sure that it's plugged in properly, because I don't want to have to take this thing apart again if that didn't hook up right. Okay, starting it up. Okay, looks like it all works. Alrighty, Now I can screw it back together again. And there we have it, the completed bottom area with the bin, USB charger, and the climate controls, all nice and flush there. Press that in a little more. There we go. Nice and flush. So now we turn to the upper area to prepare that. Okay, next we're going to actually look at the double din, and you'll see there's this plastic rib here which has to go away. You may also have these little brackets which are in either side. This is where the AC unit was, and the upper screw held the AC unit into the dash, and then there'd be a lower screw, and I just taken both of these out, which just essentially holds this this bracket and the side of the AC unit slotted in there. So we take out that on both sides, and then the next thing is we're going to take out this rib here to fit the double din in there, and then we'll have this piece of trim around it, but obviously the unit can't get in with that there, and it has to be ribbed. Next, we want to run a USB cable into the glove box, and so the way to do that is there's a opening there, which is going to lead to where the glove box has its light. So if you see here, you see that light back there? If I close the glove box, light is gone. So there, clearly light leakage, and therefore you can put a cable through there. So the way to do that is to drop this light there, pry it open, and then notch right next to it, have a little hole where you can feed your cable, and then feed the cable through there, and then close up the light again. So for the glove box light, just use your pry tool, and there's a little notch on this side, and you can flip it down. Now it comes, and you can see here, you can feed the USB through there. You just have to make a little notch on the side there so that it can come through. So I'm going to do that with a drill, and then feed the cable through, and then seal it back up again. Okay, so the original plan was to notch inside the area underneath the glove compartment, but when I got in there, it actually looks like there was a back wall, so it wouldn't notch easily. So instead, I notched the cover on the light. So I'll notch that. I'll just run the USB through there. So I unplugged the light, I notched there, knowing that the cable could run this way. So what I'm going to do is plug this back in, route the cable, and then show you how that puts together. Okay, so the glove box light just plugs in, and you can see up there, it just plugs in there. And I notched it here such that the cable, the USB cable, can fit in there like that. So when I snap this back in there, the USB cable will be able to run into the glove box, and then you just feed it back here where it'll go to the back of the double din unit, so that you can charge another device, put a hard drive, whatever you're going to put here in the glove box. Okay, so now we've essentially taken care of AC that works. So I don't have to drive the car around now. I'm still fixing everything else. That's done. I've got a USB running into the glove box. Now we've got to put in all the other pieces before putting in the head unit here. I'm going to get to cutting out this rib in a little bit, the rib and these ears. Since I have a 2003, there's also this metal chassis that has to come out. If you can see, there's this metal chassis there, and it also has these little ears on it. The issue is that these ears, which are used when the AC was here to keep it propped up, are going to block the double din from going in, so they have to come out. And the issue, though, is that in an 03 we've got our magic cup holders, and those are held up by that frame. So because I have the cup holders, I'm going to have to take out that frame and then drill out those ears, this tab here, or just take tin snips and remove them, because these things are blocking the way, and then put it back in there to support the cup holders. So that has to be done. That's one of the things that has to be done. So cut this and remove that. And then the other thing is put in the reverse camera. So with the reverse camera, one thing that I've just learned, because I've got an 03, apparently with most other models you actually have to run a line from the reverse light. So you'd run a line from the tail light all the way here to for reverse. But in the 03s, the wiring harness has a blue and a black wire right there. So what I'm going to do is actually test to see if this blue and black is a reverse line, which I can co-opt and actually run that directly into the double DIN to turn it on. So what that does is when the car is in reverse, it's going to switch the view on the screen to the reverse camera. So that's why you need that. So I'll want to test that before I run the cable, the video cable, from the back of the car to the front, because I don't want to have to do this twice and potentially run that other line. So if this ends up essentially being a positive, it's like 9 volts or something when I turn on the car and put it on reverse, then I know that I have a line here which will get me the reverse. So I'm going to see about whether or not that happens before I go any further on the reverse camera. But so a few mechanical things need to happen, cutting this out, cutting that out, and then we'll turn to the reverse camera, checking on this blue and black to see if that can suffice instead of having to run a line all the way from the back of the car. Okay, so we've got the Kenwood DNX995S, and this is the mounting bracket for it. It's going to slide right in. It's got these locking mechanisms. That's not too much different from the Becker that we took out. You put in these little keys to slide it in and out. But as you can tell, we've got that rib in the middle of the car here, which needs to be cut out. So now we need to cut out anything that's going to stop this from sliding in nicely. Okay, you want to cut relatively evenly on the left and the right so that it slides in and is kind of in the middle properly. This box will be mounted as close to the flush to the bottom as possible, but you can see here, let me get it centered, that there's a little piece of an ear there and that rib. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out with a hacksaw. So I've got my handy-dandy hacksaw here, which I'm going to use. Hacksaw doesn't fit in, so I have to take the blade out and use the blade by hand to cut along there. I'm just going to eyeball it for now, about exactly where I got to cut the first one, and then file it down further later. But in the meantime, I'm also going to protect the car a little bit. This is going to generate a bunch of plastic that's falling off there. So put that in there, and then I'm going to start hacksawing it. So one thing with the hacksaw, you want to do it more or less in a line, and you can see that if I were to slide this cage in just on the bottom piece to make sure that it fits, so just tilting it downward like that, it would slide in if that ear were not in the way, right? If this rib in the ear were not in the way. So it would slide in like that. So what that means is that along this line right here, if I can cut the hacksaw straight up, that would be correct. So straight in that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little trick. The hacksaw won't fit in there. So I've wrapped the blade of the hacksaw in a tissue paper, in a paper towel, so that I can use this like a hand saw, and then I'm of course going to protect my hand with a glove, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut essentially straight up from this line, because I know that this is the line that that fits the cage. So if I do that, then it should be centered, because I know it's centered as between here and here. Okay, so now that I've cut out those little ears, which were here, here, and here, here, and the rib that goes across, now the cage will fit in there. And I'll have to secure that later. I'm just going to leave it here for, actually I'm not going to leave it here, because I have to take out these things here, because I have an 03 with cup holders. So I need to get rid of these things here. So what I need to do for doing that is actually take out this horseshoe bit here, and to be able to access this here, take out this metal piece, drill out or use tin snips to take out these things here, these things that will stop the unit, the double DIN unit, from going back, and then reinstall this back in here. But I can't really get to it unless I take out this horseshoe, because the screws are kind of behind it there. So that's the next order of business. Carefully pull this out here. So the next thing is the horseshoe, and unless I can, it looks like a Torx screw right there. So let's get 1, 2 Torx screws to get that thing out, and then I'll get that out and then show you how that works. So you can see here just another view of it and why I need to take this out. These are the things that need to come out because they protrude in here. But the reason why the metal piece is here is because you can see it's supporting the cup holder. You'll see a little clip back here, and it's supporting the cup holder unit itself. So it's not just held on by plastic here, but also by that little clip. So I need to pull this thing out. I'm going to see if I first can do it without pulling out the horseshoe to get access to it, because it's a Torx screw right there and right there, and if I can, I'll pull that out without taking out the horseshoe, because there's more trim to deal with. But if I can't, then I'll have to take out the horseshoe. So that's what's up next. Okay, I thought I could get away without taking off the horseshoe, but I at least have to take it off part of the way, because even though I had a very small Torx screwdriver, which I could get on this side, there was enough clearance there, the cigarette lighter adapter didn't let me get in close enough to this Torx screw right here. So I had to partially unsnap this one. And I just made sure to use my pry tool so it wouldn't damage any of the leather around here. Now it's partially off, and now I can get in here. Now if you don't have this kind of Torx, which is pretty small and can work in tight spaces, although it is a little fat, which isn't great, then you might have to take this all the way off and then go in straight through. This whole thing, this whole assembly comes off, and then you can go straight through with a regular Torx driver to that right there. But just showing you that I have to take this off a little bit. Make sure to use your soft pry tool though, so that you don't damage anything. No screwdrivers allowed. Okay, so now the horseshoe is fully off, and the reason for that is this metal piece that we're talking about here. I did not know that it was also, it's hard to see here, but it also goes around the cup holders. So you can't pull it straight out. Those 2 Torx screws that held it in place were not enough. So what I'm going to try to do now is actually undo using 1, 2, 3, 4 points here, and take this plastic piece out. And with this out and the horseshoe out, I should be able to slide that metal piece out. So that's next. Let's see if it works. Okay, just undoing those 4 bolts didn't work. I'm not getting enough give here, so I'm actually going to undo the switch panels, each of the switch plugs. So first, take a picture of them, make sure that we know the order: yellow, green, black, cigarette adapter. And on the other side, I've got 3 blanks, and then the dimmer. So I'm going to undo all of these, and that'll let me take the horseshoe assembly off, and then not have these wires in the way, so that I can actually get a little more room to get this plastic bit off. Okay, so this turns out to be a lot more involved than had hoped. So in essence, once you take off the horseshoe from here, you still need to get to the top of this area, because these ears are on this metal thing that goes above the cup holder. And what's in the way is the vents. So you gotta pull out the vents and just yank them out, and then they'll come out. And then this assembly, once you've taken out the 4 Torx screws, will come out, and then you can take out this metal piece and then do what you're supposed to, which is get rid of those metal ears. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to pull out this center piece here and go from there. Okay, it's free. So I now have this piece of metal. Got a little bit mangled in taking it out. Not too badly, but pretty much how it works is this is the cup holder assembly right there, and it went around it and to the back. So I pulled it right off, and now I can get to the next step, which is getting rid of these tabs here. And that can be done either by getting rid of this like tin snips and cutting this thing off. It would leave a bit of a sharp edge there, or drilling out these rivets to take this out. So one or the other, and one way or another, I'm getting those things off. Okay, I got the little ears off. I've just covered the area with tape, but there were 2 rivets that secured each one to the side, like that. And the rivets were through the back. There's the back of one still right there. And I just pried them off with this, and then used an awl and a hammer to bash out the rest of them, and more or less keeping the shape of this thing. So now to put it back on without its little ears and reassemble the guts of this thing. So what that would be is I'll put this back around the housing. So I've got the housing here, and then this will go back around it, and then I'll push it back in there, and then snap the vents back in on top. All right, it's back in there, and just make sure when feeding the switch through that it doesn't get trapped in the metal. So that it needs to be outside of the metal bracket, because nothing should be in the way of the metal bracket. These will all either be shoved in back or be plugged into the new double DIN. So they can be going through here, but all the other switches need to go through the outside of the metal bracket, not the inside. It looks like that's flush, and then I'm going to put back in the Torx screws that go on the outside, and then put back in the vents, and that should be good to go for that piece. And there's the hole in which the double DIN is going to go. Okay, we are back inside the car, and we are about to start the rear view camera installation. And because we want to run as few wires as possible from the back to the front of the car, we have to run the RCA jack with the video feed, the RCA wire, but we want to check if the reverse wire is already wired up. And I'm in a 2003 996, and in some of them, this blue and black wire in the original Becker harness, you can see blue and black there, actually has a reverse, it actually is the reverse, will run a 9 volts when it's in reverse. So I've got my voltmeter here. I'm going to attach the common to the battery, and then test with the hot here and see if I get a reading. Now, I should get no reading right now, because essentially the car is off, the accessory is off. So I'm just going to probe this in there to see if I get anything. Shouldn't get anything, and then come back, turn the car into accessory, and then if the car is in reverse, then I should get a signal there. So see if that happens. Okay, turn the accessory on. Okay, I'm in reverse here, and I'm going to check out this black wire here, the black and blue, and see what I get. And I get a nice 12 volts right there. So that does show that I'm in reverse and do that. Now I'm going to pop it out of reverse, make sure that that is associated with reverse and not with something else. And it looks like I'm not getting a signal there. Nope. Alright, so it is associated with being in reverse, which is fantastic because that's one less line I have to run. And for those not familiar with using the multimeter, essentially this is a totally old school one, but I've set it to DC direct current, which is what your cars are, unlike AC, which is what's in your house, alternating current. So you'll be DC volts, and you want it to be, mine has a 15 volt limit, and you want it to be above what would be a normal 12 volt car system. So the unit that will be right above it for me would be 15, it might be 20 for you, and then this little thing will go ahead there, and then you're going to attach the positive one, which is the red, positive, to the thing you're testing for continuity, and then the other one called the common or negative ground, and I just kind of snaked it around because I wasn't sure if I could get a good connection point somewhere else in the car. And there it goes to the negative terminal on the battery. So that's the common of the ground. The other thing that you can do, cars are grounded, the negative terminal is grounded to the chassis of the car. So you could also find some metal point somewhere, but I wasn't sure I could find a good one inside the cabin, so it was easy enough to just run a bunch of these alligator clips all the way there. And that's how I did that test. Okay, we're going to be installing a reverse camera on the 996 2003, and you'll get a camera. It might look something like this. This particular one has, you'll drill a hole and it actually will just push and snap right in to that, and then you can feed it through. And then it comes with a long cable here, and at the end of it, RCA style jack, which will actually go into the double DIN unit, which I'm putting in. So the first thing is, don't be an idiot like me. I originally thought, well, how is this thing going to work? Because if you mount it, here's a license plate, if you mount it over the license plate, it's looking down. That's not how it's going to mount. It's actually going to mount like this, so looking outward. So you see it's angled there, and the camera is there, and so it's going to essentially mount on here in the middle looking outward, and it's a very wide angle lens. So no, it's not mounted this way looking down, because then you're just going to be looking at the street. It's mounted, and as you can see up here, there's a fair amount of space. There it is, that long there. So we're going to be mounting it there. So we have to, first of all, measure to make sure that we're going to be putting it straight in the center, and then using a drill bit, we'll actually drill straight through there and then feed it up through the tail light area, through the cabin, and to the front. Okay, so before I drill any holes into the car, into the bumper, in here, I'm actually going to make sure that I can route the cable. So I'm going to remove all of the pieces that I need to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to be drilling a hole right there. And then we need to feed the video cable through to here. But you can't really get there since there is the engine latch release here. So what you can do is follow the line for the lights, the license plate lights. So if you unscrew that, and that's just two screws will come out, so pop out, and then when we pop this in here, we can feed it through to there. And then that comes out in the back. Let me see if I can find where that is, and that comes out, probably can't see that, but it comes out right inside here. And then we're going to be able to feed it into the taillight section. So the taillight, I've taken out the left taillight, which is where you want to go. Now, just for illustration, on the right taillight, in order to get it out, it's a single 10mm hex right here. Take that out, and then the whole assembly will pop right out. So I've popped out the assembly here and unplugged it. Single thing unplugging it here. And what you see here, just interesting thing here, this is the engine release, manual cable release. So you can actually fish this out with a piece of wire. And then if you do that, if your battery's dead, you could pull on this and it'll actually open up the engine bay. But we're just going to leave that tucked in for now, so it can be fished out later if there's a dead battery. And what we're going to do is run those cables that we just we're going to run through here. It's going to go through the rear taillight area, and then it's going to go through this grommet right there with the taillight cables. I'm going to pull out this grommet. There'll be another grommet behind it, and then we're going to have to go, follow these cables through this grommet and then through the other grommet. So that's what we're doing first, and then we're actually going to rejoin inside the car as I show you the whole route that the cable will go before we actually do it. Okay, inside the car, first removing the 2 Torx screws that hold in the speaker here. Use your pry tools. Start from this side to pull it open because the clip is on the front side. The clip is right here. Pull that out and it'll come out. Just leaving that in here for now. And why I'm doing this is I want to open up this area here so that I can help fish the line from the rear left brake light area through those 2 grommets and through here. So I'm starting to remove some interior paneling so that I can make that job a little bit easier. So I have the Bose speakers. So what you do is you pull off the trim on either side using your trim tool, and then afterwards there will be 2 bolts, one underneath each speaker, and once you take those out, this whole piece just pulls forward, and then you can unplug the subwoofer system from here. And when you're ready to put it back on, it just slides onto those right there. Okay, now with the Bose removed, the next thing is to just remove this carpet here, which should pull forward, and then I should be able to start gaining access to there. Okay, with the Bose system out, I've unplugged the speaker. Just keep it back there. Now, actually, in order to remove this trim panel here, I'm going to have to start all the way up here with the coat hook, remove that, then remove the top of the seat belt, the adjustable seat belt, and then once those are out, then I'll remove the B-pillar trim, and then remove this, and then I'll finally be able to get to this piece here, which I have to take out. And hopefully, I've been meaning to do this anyway, hopefully I'll be able to get to the seatbelt retractor in here, because this driver's side seatbelt is just really not retracting terribly snappily, so maybe I can get to there and see what's going on in there while I'm doing it. So in any case, I've got to start with the top, go all the way down to get back, so that I can make sure that I can actually reach when I'm going to be feeding that cable through the side of the car. Okay, a couple notes on removing the trim. So this was here, and I used a pry tool, like this one, and put it in at an angle right around here, and turn up, and that'll pop off. Now this thing feels like it's going to break when it's coming off. So this is the little button that can adjust the height of the seatbelt, and this is what it looks like on the inside. And it's held on by these little clips, which do indeed look really easy to break. So I don't actually know if there's a better way of getting them off, but I thought I'd show you what it looks like inside. So you can see this is the button bit here. Just up and down, and so that would go on like this. So I just kind of pried it off from the sides, which probably is not optimal because of these little buttons, which look like they had a little bit of stress when I did that. Okay, we're inside the car, and on the B pillar here, first taking off the seatbelt cover, which the first time I did it, I actually took the two pieces apart, which was incorrect. And you're not supposed to actually take the front cover off of the back. Just use a screwdriver to pry this off of the bolt, which is here. There's a bolt, and the bolt will hold this in here, and then this little guy snaps over both of them. So you get a little button here, which snaps over that guy. There. Alright, so then you take off the B pillar trim. There's a single bolt up here, which you unscrew, and then you may need to play around with your trim pieces under the rubber to loosen it up a little bit, and then it will pop off. So that's the B pillar piece there. So next on the B pillar, you remove this trim fastener here, and you'll see it's just around the driver's seatbelt. And if you look in here, you can see that there's a little tooth that goes in there, so you're gonna have to lift that up. Let me see if I can be smart and actually use my camera for that. No, too dark. Alright. You can see there's a little tooth in there. And the idea behind that is that you pick it up and lift it over and pull it out. And that's how you're going to get this little trim piece out. And once you get it out, it looks like this. And you can see on the inside, these are the clips that we're holding it in. So it's clipped around here and just sits on top of the trim there. And then this piece here, that's a little tooth that goes into that hole back there to pull it to the side and hold it to the body of the car. So that's what that looks like when you're trying to pry it out. So you have to push upward really for it, but you might have to do a little work right there because you can't really go up unless you get in there and pry it out a little bit. Okay, on the side panel, there is this little holder which the back seat flips up and clips into. I don't know if you can see in here, but there looks like there's two hexes. One is a little hex that looks like it goes in the middle. I had no luck actually getting anything to come out, but by taking a larger hex wrench, one that fits the bigger size of the entire opening, I could actually get that out. So that'll unscrew like this, and that'll give you access to being able to take off this panel here. Next, taking out the screw from right here, kind of behind the driver's seat belt. And after removing that screw, you can just pull, the panel will come out. There's some clips on the back, but you can just kind of work your arms around that and pull out towards the back, the rear seat belt there, and then the whole piece will come out. And note that the lower carpet is attached to the side panel, so it's going to come there together. Let's take it to the other side. Let's see. It's one piece along the back. So it's one piece that comes out like that. Now you can see the guts of the whole thing on the side. There's still some foam noise deadening stuff in there, but we should now be able to more easily reach through when we are going to be feeding that cable from the rear side, because we're feeding the cable from where the brake light comes in, the rear left brake light, As we can see, we now have some access in here to that area of the back left, and that'll allow us to feed the cable through the bodywork to here, and eventually we're going to have to go down and around underneath there and up to this lovely gap where we have an opening for our soon-to-be doubled in. Okay, so now that we've gotten the interior open so that we can access it, we're going to have to run the cable for the reverse camera, which is coming from the license plate area up through underneath here where this license plate light electrical goes. We're going to go through here. We're going to come up into the housing for the brake light. And then we're going to need to go through this grommet here. And it's probably going to be impossible for you to see this, but there is the grommet, and this grommet goes to another one that's behind there. And let's see if I can turn that on somehow. Turn on my light. There's another grommet behind here, and you can't see it. Let me, what you want to do is actually drill through that second grommet, and there's a soft spot in it. So let me switch over to another, turn on the light and do that. Okay, so as you can see, pulled this grommet out, and way in here is another one. And while you can't see it, I don't think you're going to be able to see it with this camera, but there's another grommet which leads into the cabin of the car. And what we do is we're going to drill using a 3/8 inch paddle bit through that grommet. So that grommet is about this big around, and it's got the other side of this cable going through the middle of that. But there's a large area around it of rubber, and we can drill through that rubber and create a place to pass our cables through. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to drill through using this paddle bit very slowly, making sure not to damage these cables that are already in there. Now I'm going to take the world's longest zip tie. I'm going to feed it through the grommet hole that I just drilled so that I can see the route and make sure that I've got a clear shot all the way to the cabin of the car. Okay, so now we have the zip tie, and it's been fed through the far grommet there. And as you can see, coming through, I've reached my hand down beneath the seatbelt to the side, and you can see there the zip tie is coming out. So now I know that we have a clear path from the outside taillight to the interior cabin where we can route the wire for the reverse camera. And if you're not lucky like me and you don't have the reverse line already in the dash, you'd be routing that from the tail light here as well. Okay, now removing the sill panel on the driver's side, there are two little holes there where we'll need to work in a Torx wrench. They're covered up by these little plastic things. I mangled the first one, gotta get out a little bit, but you can take a knife and kind of put the blade of the knife against the edge and work it really slowly, and they'll pop right out. And the bolts are about a couple inches back inside there, so this is going to be a bit of a challenge to do this without removing the seat. So we'll see if I can do it without removing the seat. I can probably get this one, but the other one here might be a little bit more challenging. So it's like 2 inches back, the bolt that holds this assembly onto the frame there. Okay, so now I've got the Torx T30, and I found the bolt inside. Now I'm going to want to go 6 turns and not completely unscrew it, because we don't want that screw falling down in there and getting out of the assembly. So we want to do 6 turns to get it out. Okay, so I'm going to do that and then come right back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's starting to come out. Okay, I'm going to do the other side, which is going to be a little trickier because of the seat. I think I can probably fit it in because this one turns. So I'm going to do that. Okay, I've done my 6 turns. Your mileage may vary. And now to lift it up using a pry tool. So this entire assembly here will come up using a pry tool. Once you've lifted up this with a pry tool, you'll see why you didn't want to do within 6 turns for this torque screw, because it's just going to pop right out there. You only need to do 6 so that this little slot here can fit over the edge. And then we're going to want to make sure those washers are positioned nicely when we put it back on. But now we have access here to underneath the carpet. So now we can actually route the cables that we're going to all the way along here and inside and out to the front. So the hard part is now done. The hard part, routing from the back, will be easy to get under the carpet to there. While I'm at it, I'm going to be looking at this retractor, which is kind of lazy. Seeing if I can fix that. But this is great. A lot of the hard work is done. Okay. Next, the cable is going to go underneath this carpet and underneath here. And we just have to make sure that we don't interfere with any of the pedals. But it's essentially, I'm just going to run it underneath the carpet and then across and then to the center console there. So all I'm going to have to do is get behind this carpet. Pretty simple. Got my pry tool. Become a big fan of these things. Not damaging any of the plastic bits using them. So I'm going to see if I can pry this one off here so that I can get under the carpet there. So I'll see if the carpet just comes up here at the seam. Possibly. So if not, then I'll take this one off and then I can be able to feed it through, because it'll be able to go through the sill on this side of the carpet and go through underneath to here, and then I can see if I can get it to go under there, under the carpet right there. Okay, that's next. Okay, it's gonna look like it's gonna be able to run pretty easily. I'm gonna run it actually just inside the cabin and not inside this housing here, because the housing goes through here and straight to the fuse box. So I've pulled the fuse box cover just to see what the carpeting is like there. And the carpeting is on these little clips. So I'll show you the one that's I have not yet removed. Looks like this. And then all that's happened is that the rubber from the sill is over it. And that kind of holds it down. So if you take your pry tool, put it under the sill, then you can just pull this up and out, and you've got some really great access to the carpet. So now I can run it along there, along here. This is actually a separate piece, so I can just run right along there, and then up the side, and put it up along here, and then behind here. Make sure I don't interfere with any of mechanical components or anything, and then I'll pop out right on the other side. So now we've got a clear line from the back of the car to the front of the car, and that means that I can do the next step, which is the one I've been dreading, which is drilling a hole for the camera in here. I've not been looking forward to drilling a hole in the car, but that's That's what's next. Okay, next up is to drill the hole for the camera. So first of all, I'll put some tape over there, some painter's tape to protect the paint, and I measured the midpoint here along the entire bumper span. That's the midpoint there. And the camera itself is 3/4 of an inch, and that's the same size as this drill bit. So what I'm going to do is measure 3/4 of an inch using this ruler on either side so that I make sure that I'm actually putting it in the middle of the hole. So right now I've got this center line right there, but I need to measure on either side also because I don't want to mismeasure and have it too far forward, right? So if it's too far forward, then it'll be beyond the lip here. So I want to make sure I'm getting it far enough back, but also not going to be interfering with this. So I'll hold up the camera in a couple positions and then try to mark what would be the center, make my little cross there, and then be able to drill that hole. So also to note, on this camera, you don't want to just measure half of 3/4 of an inch here from the edge, because if you look from the side, it actually sticks out further. So we want this edge to be no further than the lip here. Okay, so I'll lay that to the edge where I want it to be, and then measure how far back the center point, which is where the wire comes out, is from that. So that'll make sure that I'm at least here or further back and not putting it too far forward and having this little lip that could catch. Okay, I actually took off the license plate and holder in order to get there. Made a nice little X measuring how far back I want it to go. So 3/4 of an inch is plenty to get to the lip there, and then the thing itself is about 3/4 of an inch, so it'll go back to there. And because it's curved here, it should clear the license plate as well, which I can then put underneath it. But what I'm going to do is hold it in place, the license plate holder, to make sure that it'll clear. In the worst case, I can cut a notch out of that, but it should work. And the moment that I've been dreading, which is drilling into the body of the car, got it covered with tape so that hopefully it shouldn't damage things outside of it. And got my safety glasses on. Let's see what happens. Wow, that was remarkably easy. It is thicker than you think as you're going through. A bit still hot here. As you're going through, it's probably more than 1/8 of an inch in there. So you think it's just going to pop right through, but it's not. Actually, I should have realized that based on the thickness of this here. But pretty nice, clean hole here. Put down the drill for a sec. And let's see what disaster has struck. Take this off. Wow, nice and clean. All right, next thing is camera. Gotta fish this little guy through this hole, through there, to the grommet that goes into the engine. That then goes, and I gotta feed it in to the taillight section, and then up ahead with Mr. Zip Tie feeding that into the body of the car. That's next. Okay, it's now fed through the first section, and you can see there, it's going up into the body. And then I can just pop this guy in here and feed the rest through. Okay, and a choice to be made is I've got this guy now in there nicely, and then the cable runs out through here, runs out through a grommet with the rear lights come out as well. And we're to run it from here. Now, I could try and fish it through this hole where the release, the trunk, manual trunk release is. That's option A, a little bit hard to get to. I'm actually just going to run it through here. This is the lip that seals onto this gasket for closing the engine bay. And as long as I go under there, it should be fine. So if I go under here and route it down and underneath, then that should be fine. And you can actually shove it here underneath this black bit there. And there I go with this. And now let's get my trusty fishing here. And now I put that into the grommet in there and pull it through to the other side. Okay, and now we are through. I'm going to leave a little bit of give here in this so that when I put the rear light back on, it's going to be a little bit of wiggle room there instead of pulling it totally taut. Now going into here, you can see that I have come out the other side, and here it is. And so now I can undo that piece there from the fish, the zip tie fish, and plug it in to the rest of the wiring, which is right here. There should be some smooth sailing from this point, because this was the tough part. So what I'm going to do is tape that from there, run the cable down on the side, underneath the side panel there, and to the front. Next up, I'm going to be putting the satellite antenna into the trunk compartment. So I've already taken out the trunk liner for a different project, so you can ignore that. But they remove these three cover pieces, and the satellite antenna can't be blocked by the metal on the trunk, so it has to go under here, kind of back there, where there is the air filter, the cabin air filter. So I'm going to be opening up all of these panels, get to the cabin air filter area there, put the mount inside there, and then run the cables through and behind the battery. I have to move the side of the battery a little bit, and then into the cabin of the car. The plastic covering on the entire area here, so first the battery compartment and then the two sides here. I'm going to be installing the GPS antenna here, so I'll need to clean that a little bit, clean the surface. It's just going to stick on with a piece of 3M tape and be mounted here, and then we're going to need to run the cable through here and behind the battery, and there's a grommet behind the battery which can be pushed through, so it might not be easy to see here. If you look, there's the battery, and right back here is a grommet. So if we remove the battery and remove this terminal, we can push the battery to the passenger side of the car, get access to this grommet there, pop the grommet into the car. It should come out on the other side just above the gas pedal. And then once we've got the grommet removed, we can make a hole in it, and then we can run the antenna along here through there into the passenger compartment. Then it can go up and behind the center stack, and then it can go to the navigation unit. Okay, now we're mounted under here, and this wire is coming out, and what I've done is I've taken my zip tie here and threaded it through so I can pull this wire through to the other end behind this area here. Now the important thing is to make sure it doesn't interfere with any of the wiper mechanism, which is kind of hard to see from this angle, but you don't want to zip tie it or otherwise tie it to the wiper arms. So that's this right here, which will be moving back and forth. So you can, if you feel up there, you can feel where it's going. Instead, I'm going to be zip tying it down here to make sure that it doesn't get tangled up in anything. And then routing it down, you can see I've popped out that grommet, which goes right here. And if you can see some light going through there, that's actually the cabin right above the gas pedal. So I've just zip tied it there, running back across underneath here, zip tying it to make sure it doesn't get caught in any of these arms here for the wipers. Now I'm going to run it down through the grommet, and I'm not going to be able to show you this because it's going to be really dark down there, but once I get inside and I get this to the right length, then it's going to be, the cable will be way too long. So what you want to do is don't coil the cable like this. All right, don't make it into a big circle because there'll be a lot of crosstalk on it then. Instead, you can go back and forth. So essentially you can coil it like this, try to do it with one hand, and then zip tie it like this so that the signal runs in a zigzag pattern, and that's going to be a lot less crosstalk than if it's a big loop. So I'm going to feed that through there and then get it all the way through to the center stack here, coming out there, and then probably as a later step I will bundle it once I know how long things need to be without being too short. So next I'm going to be installing this Alpine unit amp into the C2 body here. So this is the factory underpowered amp, so I'll be taking that out. I'm going to have to cut the connections on that one, and then this one is going to be mounted here, so it's on the passenger side, and then I'm going to need to route the cables through into here and then into the compartment there, but it gets mounted vertically here. I understand on C4 bodies it would be mounted horizontally instead of vertically, but the first thing is to remove this factory amp, just connected with a couple bolts there, and see what that looks like underneath. Okay, the Bose factory amp is now out. Unplugged it so I get access to all the terminals, but now we can place it with this guy. To mount the new amp, we've got to go through this wall here, and so what I've done is I've drilled a hole here so that I can put a mounting bracket, the mounting bracket up against here, bolt it down, and then the amp will be mounted cable side down, and these cables will be routed into the battery compartment. A few other cables to be tied to some of these legacy wires here from the old harness. Those will stay inside the trunk. So the hard part here was noticing that it's actually inset a little bit. So when I was originally concerned about how this mounting plate would go on, and if there'd be enough space to run the cables behind it. There will be, because the metal is inset here. So you'll see that even if your mounting plate is flush, there's space behind it to run cables to the grommet and then into the battery compartment. Base plate is now in. As you can see, that screw goes to the other side, and the 3 cables which need to be routed into the battery compartment are routed through to the other side of the grommet. Now I'm just going to take these, put this onto the base plate, and then that'll be mounted properly. Now I have taken the original harness and I've snipped off all the twisted pairs here, leaving a little bit of a tail, like 2 inches there maybe, so that if I ever wanted to return it to factory, then I could just put them all together. And then for each pair, I strip it out, and then I test to see which speaker it goes to. Now, in many of these, they'll have a standard pairing, like the left dash is yellow and yellow-brown stripe, left door is green and green with brown stripe, left rear is white with white and brown, right rear is blue and blue-brown, and right door is purple and purple-brown, and right dash is red and red-brown. However, when I opened up mine, I didn't have a white and brown other than these big guys right here, and that's not a normal twisted pair. So this probably goes to the subwoofer, is my guess. And then this is most likely power here, which I'll just test. This red and blue is most likely power, and then the ground is the brown. And then I'm guessing that these two big thick ones are for the Bose aftermarket subwoofer. So what I'm now doing is labeling every single one of these to where they go. And what I do is I actually have these little alligator clips, and I will attach them to both sides of these. So let's look at which one I'm testing right now. It's just testing left rear. So I do attach that and attach that, and then I go inside the car. These run all the way inside the car, and then I go inside the car and I touch a 9-volt battery just very quickly to the to each end of this. So negative, positive, and then if I hear a crackle, then I know that that's the circuit. So that way I know when I hear a crackle, I take note of what speaker it is, then I come back here and then I label, you know, that's the right dash, etc. So that way I know where each wire set goes, because when I've got my amp here and I'm going to be wiring them here, I'm going to need to know where everything goes. So that's the way to test it there. I just have to make sure right now that the the white and the white with brown is actually the subwoofer, because that's the one thing I don't know from all of this testing. Okay, now I'm hooking things up to the amp, and so I want to take the way I'm going to configure this is that the dash, tweeters, and mid-range speakers are going to be driven by channels 1 and 2. Channel 1 and 2 comes off of this here, and so I've got to isolate the dash tweeters, which is the left dash is yellow, and in my case the mid-range speakers, the left rear is not the standard white and white-brown. Mine is blue and blue-brown, and brown stripe always means negative. So now I'm going to pair that up with this white and green. In this case, green is left negative, white is left positive. So I'll take all the negatives together and go from there. Turns out I screwed up and I did not put the RCA cables into the amp, which was stupid because how's anything going to get there? So I've now put them there and of course labeled them so that when they are threaded all the way through to the cabin, I'll know what the heck they are. So the way it works here is go through this. There is already a hole cut in the trunk liner. Go through there, and as I talked about earlier, there's a little pocket here, and I cut the grommet so that the cables can go through without touching the metal. So I just cut a little cross in there, and then I'm going to make sure that this goes around so it's not touching any of the metal as it goes through. And then next is to wire it up to the battery and then run all the audio cables into the cabin. Now that we have all of the cables coming through into the battery compartment, we've got 3 RCA cables, we've got a negative power terminal, we've got a controller cable, positive power terminal. So all of these things, the RCAs and this cable, which is going to connect to the head unit, are going to go into the cabin. And so they're going to go and be routed back here, and along here, and down to the grommet. And that's the same grommet that we used to get the last thing in there. So when we were doing the GPS mount, that was done there. So that's as you're facing the car, it's on the driver's side. So then the other thing we're going to need to do is run power for the amp. And so I'm taking the power, crimped on, the power cable comes looking kind of just like this. So I'm going to crimp on a little ring there, and then I'm going to hook it up directly to the negative side here. And then later on, this will attach to a fuse container here. It's going to attach on this side here, and then on the other side, here's the other ring, and that's going to attach to the positive side. So all I'm going to do is attach this crimp here onto this. So we're going to secure the negative side first, make sure it's grounded, Then I'm going to run all of these things back behind there and then into the compartment of the car and then run it up to the center stack. One note about running these cables underneath, again, as last time, watch out for the wiper arms because there's movement happening right here. Here's the battery, and the wiper arms are moving there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie these here and then zip tie them on the other end to the body brace, and that way it's gonna keep them taut along this length and they won't get snagged on anything. One other thing to note is that the main power coming off of the battery, and it's going to go actually into the engine compartment, or into the body compartment near the driver's side as well. And this cable, which it's this big thick cable, and I'll show it to you later. It connects the battery to the engine. It's black as it runs through there, and there's a lot of electrical noise coming off of this. So what we don't want to do is zip tie this to run at all in parallel with this, because that's going to introduce a lot of noise. So it's tough, and I probably could have routed this a little bit further away here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to route this so that as much as possible it's at a right angle to this cable. So not parallel, but at a 90-degree angle from this main power cable here to reduce any electrical noise that might happen. It's going to be a little tight, and also because I'm going to have the fuse thing going through here as well. But as much as possible, I'm going to try to get this down and out of the way and at a 90-degree angle from any of these main power lines to reduce any electrical noise that can be generated by that line there. Here we are underneath the driver's area. It's the gas pedal, and this is that ground wire there, not this bundle here, but this big large gauge thing that runs all the way the length of the car. So I've just fed my RCA another controller cable through that grommet there, and I'm going to run it across this way, being sure to make sure that everything is well out of the way, obviously, the gas pedal, and that I'm crossing this at a 90-degree angle, because we don't want any of that electrical interference here. In the passenger compartment, there's also that grommet through which we just ran all of the cables. There's also this little piece of sound deadening material, so I just cut a channel in it, and I'm just going to route all of the cables through that so I can put this back in place and reduce the road noise by very little with this little plug, but may as well put it back. So all of the cables are now in. They've been pulled around from under the driver's side, and from the previous sessions, also one going to the glove box, in which we have a USB cable. So I've just put in the cage right here for the nav unit, for the head unit, and I put in the cage and then lined it up by putting the frame and putting that onto the cage and making sure it's flush. So it's exactly where it needs to be now, and there's not a lot for this to grab onto here, so what you do is just drill through these tiny teensy little screws into here to try to get some purchase on this plastic bit right there at the edge. But the important thing, line the cage up first and make sure that it's going to be flush, because once you drill into it here, you're not moving it. So that's the next step, to drill into the side, keep it steady, and then I'll start hooking everything up. The big challenging one is going to be the ignition, which has to be hooked up kind of underneath the driver's side. This is what these screws look like when they're driven in. They can be at an angle, and this metal actually, you might not understand how the screw can get flush, but the metal pushes itself in. So if you go like that, you'll see that it actually is flush, because when it sinks into the plastic on the other side, then it'll actually bend these little tabs back. So it will be flush when the unit comes in and out. And on this side, we do have this pokey bit here we're trying to put something on top of to make sure it doesn't snag any of the wires, because as you can see on here, this is where some of the switches are going to run, so we have to make sure that that doesn't compromise anything there. Okay, underneath the driver's side, I've taken out this air duct, which can be taken out by just moving it towards the side of the car, towards the driver's side of the car, compressing it, just got a little accordion on it, and then pulling it down. And so here I am underneath, and there is the harness, the ignition harness. So I'm going to need to tap into this orange cable here. Orange is right there, this big fat orange one there, and that should be the accessory. So what I'm going to do before I tap into it is I'm going to put the multimeter in there, test it for 12 volts when the key is inserted and put in the accessory position. If it reads 12 volts, then that is the accessory ignition, and I will tap into there for the power for the radio. So I've connected, got my multimeter here, I've shoved the positive one into that orange bundle. Negative one, I actually just ran a cable all the way to the battery because sometimes I'm not sure how good a ground the bodywork is when it's painted. So as you can see here, it's reading nothing, and I'm going to insert the key into the ignition. Key in ignition, nothing. Turn to accessory position. There we go, 12 volts. Turn it off, and out again. So now we know that that orange line is indeed accessory power, so we can tap into that for the power for the radio. So now I've tapped into power from the cigarette lighter for the instrument panel illumination. So on this cigarette lighter, you'll see that there's 3 going in, and this blue-gray wire will flow 12 volts when the lights are on. So essentially I'm stealing power from here, which is going to go into the harness and be able to tell the system when it should be in night mode, because I've got the instruments illuminated. So I'm just stealing power from there with one of these snap connectors. And we're almost there. Just a few more things. I've got to connect this to the reverse. Connect this. This is meant to be connected to the parking brake. And the idea is to not let you watch videos when you are driving, so that you actually have to have the brake depressed in order to do that, or have the parking brake on. I'm just going to connect this to ground, and that way it'll just disable it, instead of having this kind of nanny feature in there, which I don't need because I'm not watching movies anyway. And this will connect to reverse, and as I showed earlier on, I actually have a reverse wire here because this is a 2003 996, and it had that pre-wired. So I'll be able to tap into the reverse wire here instead of having to have run all the way from the tail light like some unfortunate people have to. So I'll just be able to connect that into this harness here, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, we are all wired up. There. Moment of truth. Turning on. Let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. We have life. Starting up. What else it's doing there? I have to figure that out. But it's alive. Yep, there we go. All right. Excellent. Starting up. I did notice that so I gotta figure out why I've got a signal like that. That would be because the left taillight is out. So we took it out in order to put the camera, feed the camera through. So in any case, we have life, it's there. Now I'll just test it out and make sure that it actually does everything before I put it in there and lock it in place, and we are good to go. Okay, it's in. There it is. Now I've just got to finish cleaning up all the mess, put back together all of this stuff, all the way running back, put in the tail light, and then tie off everything there in bundles, make sure it's working yet again. But that's pretty much the shape of it. It's just doing everything in reverse. Get it back together again. Hopefully shouldn't take too long. Gotta put it in the subwoofer also. That's come out and sitting up there. So I'll put it all back together again and then show the final product.